Okay, we are moving now into the fifth week. I'm going to talk about the 8 orders of self here, and particularly want to pull apart for you the various parts of this map. So this is a complex map that I have found to be immensely valuable and has been valued of many, many other people too. And it is a composite of a set of issues which I want to kind of tease apart for you here. So there are three aspects to this map that kind of pull it together, that feed together to create it, plus which it's built upon a whole bunch of other maps, and some of those you've already seen in the previous video, largely the work of Ken Wilber, of Dick Schwartz, and of Bob Keegan. But we don't need to get into all that. There are lots of other people too. Those are just the ones that have most directly impacted me. So distinctions, development, and dimensions. So let me just stop this for a moment. So distinctions. This is not the same as that. No two things are exactly alike, but the capacity to notice what is different and why it's different, and to be able to see even subtle differences between things are critically important to be able to understand the complexity of things, to know that no two things are exactly alike. But there are some things that arise together, and so it's kind of hard to know what is the line between them. And so what we will do is we want to set, because we want simple maps, we will set a very clear distinction between things. We'll say it's this or it's that. It's either black or it's white. It's either up or it's down. It's in or it's out. It's on or it's off. And those are dualities, which in some cases are totally valid and can be incredibly helpful. We run into a problem, though, when we begin to describe things as a duality, when in fact they're far more subtle than that. So I may know who my friends are, I may know who's on my team, but when I begin to identify those who are on the other team as my enemy, as other, so we turn people into other, we've created a duality that makes it really simple. It's kind of nice, but it doesn't take into account the complexity of what's actually going on in reality. So we want to guard against certain dualities. One of the distinctions that we can make is between cause and effect. What caused this and what was the effect of it? What's actually arising and what is arousing out? What does that arouse out of me as my response to it? And making that distinction can be really difficult to do, because when we really begin to lean into what's actually happening here, we discover that we can't actually know. We can get close to it. It's an asymptote. But we never actually know what's really going on because we're constructing maps to make sense of it. So is this what's really going on, or is this what I think is going on? Is this what I'm making it mean? So it really helps if when I'm making something mean something, I'm looking at what do other people make this mean? Can we get more points of view here? So the more points of view we have, the more perspectives we have, the more accurately we can see what's going on. So I'm going to make meaning of something, and that meaning then brings up in me a response. Here's how I see it. Here are the feelings, here are the thoughts, here are the wishes that arise for me when that happens. So that capacity to be aware of that interface between what's actually going on and what I make it mean becomes a really essential part of this map. So second thing has to do with the developmental aspects of being. Everything that grows through a process of development, right? I want to get you a little closer look at that. So I'm going to take that out of the screen for just a minute. So we go through a process of development when we're going to learn mathematics. We start with understanding what these symbols are. Oh, that's a 2. This is an 8, right? Oh, this is a fraction. What does that mean? And we discover geometry, and we discover trigonometry and calculus, and each level builds on the one before it as we learn something. We want to grow an oak tree. We plant an acorn. The acorn becomes a seedling, becomes a sapling, becomes a mature tree, which then creates more acorns. Insects go from egg to larva to pupa to adult. So there is a cycle, and there is a developmental sequence that everything goes through as it develops. Not everything, but I'm sure we can describe very simple situations, even developmentally. But the more complex the system, the more we can describe a developmental process by which that system comes into being. There's an appliance dealer here in St. Louis that has recently gotten bought out, and they're planning for a new kind of marketing for it, and they've been doing that for a year. They've been planning for it. It's just now rolling out because they had to develop it. Right? They had to develop the new marketing plan. So everything, particularly most observably complex adaptive systems, develop over time through sets of stages, through various, and James Fowler, who was most famous for his book on stages of faith, that the stages that we move through are invariant. We all move through the same stages. They are hierarchical. They move in a particular way, and they are what's the third? I can never remember exactly, but are sequential, invariant, and hierarchical. And so this is true for all of these developmental stages, right? And the third aspect that we want to put in here is about dimensions. So I want you to kind of think through this with me for a moment. I'm going to pull this out of here again. So right now, you are a physical body in a physical world. The thing about which we, in terms of our awareness of being, what is the material world and the dynamics within the material world. So I'm in a room that has some sunshine coming in. There's some energy coming in. There's a physical world here. Matter and energy are a part of this sort of fundamental experience. And I'm having a conversation with you, although not in real time, but we have a relationship with each other. Relationships don't have a physical presence. We may see artifacts of the relationship. We may have pictures that we took when we were off on vacation together, and so we make material things that somehow will evoke for us the relationship. But the relationship is not a material thing, but it can be immensely powerful in terms of how it shapes our lives. So there's the personal material, and then there's the interpersonal relational realm. But there's also an intrapersonal inner realm within each of us. Everything has an interior, and we notice that about ourselves when we kind of go into ourselves and what am I thinking and feeling. Meditation is an experience of intentionally going into that inner realm. And when we spend time in our own interiority, what we discover is there's fully as much going on within us as there is in any of these other realms. So there's the personal material, there's the interpersonal relational, there's the intrapersonal inner world, and there's also a transpersonal or a spiritual world. This is the dimension of being where everything is connected to everything else. This is, from a consciousness point of view, a kind of mystical awareness, but it's the acknowledgement that every system is a part of larger systems, and there is a system of which everything is a subsystem. So if we take these three things and we're going to put them into a kind of a map, and so we begin to create a map that we call the 8 orders of being. Now, let me see if you can see this okay. I'm going to make this a bit bigger so you can see it. So it starts down at the bottom. zero, beige down there. The Wilbur attitudes are up along the left side there, and the realms that I just described, the dimensions, are on the right side. But we move from bottom to the top. Matter and energy are observed as arising out of the Big Bang, the nothingness of the zero order. And as the universe begins to spread out and cool, there are certain dynamics by which the matter and the energy are shaped and directed. So they begin to form planets and systems of physical systems. And that what we discover out of that, moving to third order, is that there are certain laws that govern the relationships between objects. And they are formed and constrained. These objects are formed and constrained into systems. So each element is in some sense a part of a larger system. And those systems have a certain freedom within those constraints that allow complex systems to not only form but begin to change themselves. So certain molecules begin to form, and they begin to be able to recreate themselves. And so proteins begin to create protein chains, which then mimic other protein chains. And those complex systems grow to a place where they become organisms that are actually self-aware and self-organizing. And so we have living beings now beginning up at fifth order. And as those systems become self-aware, they become adaptive and be able to use their self-awareness to be able to form processes for self-regulation and healing. So the systems themselves begin to be able to, not only are they changed by physical laws, they're changed by their own conscious awareness. And these systems are all part of a larger set of systems that within the transpersonal realm moves towards a kind of coherence and harmony. An interesting example of that, it's not in terms of living systems, but in a clock shop where you have a whole wall of clocks, and if they're all pendulum operated, each pendulum swings back and forth each second. What will happen over time is that all of the clocks will begin to swing in the same frequency. There'll be slight differences, and they will slowly harmonize each other just simply because of the subtle vibrations through the wall. In a more complex system like women who ovulate, one of the things that women discover when they work closely together is that they tend to move towards having the same periodic cycles. But moving up to eighth order, there is really only one system of which all subsystems are a part. Now, this as a framework is helpful in its own way, but it's kind of abstract. And so we're going to move to a slightly more specific map here. And this is one which is really about how our own individual self develops. How do I think of me within this system? So a self develops, and in particular, it develops consciousness. So let's look at these, and we're going to spend a lot of time kind of looking through these, but I want to give you at this point a kind of a more general framework for it. And we're going to move to a way, I'm going to blow it up a little bit so you can see it better here. So beginning again at the bottom, there's beige underneath that first order, but once we're born, we have first order. I have an experience. I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm crabby, I'm happy, I'm whatever. So I have my experience, and I am connected in that sense to the material world. But I begin to discover as an infant that as I grow, I can actually notice that when I'm hungry, if I eat, now I'm satisfied. And if I'm cold and I put on a sweater, I feel warm. And if I need to get someplace and I know how to drive a car and I've got the keys, I can drive there. So there's certain second order things that I can do which will change my first order experience. First order has to exist for second order to have any kind of meaning, because I'm gauging the choices that I make based upon my ability to transform my own experience. But what choices I make are also choices that are made in the context of relationships with others. So at third order, we discover that we have certain roles within our relationships with others, and for me to be able to get what I need and to be able to function well, I have to be able to respond to the expectations of others. So I begin to learn this is what is expected of me. But sometimes I want to be other than what others want me to be. Maybe I want to express myself in my own unique way. So at fourth order, I begin to choose my own roles. I choose who I'm in relationship with. I discover that I have the capacity to construct myself by who it is I choose to be. So fourth order is the beginning of self-organization within the human experience. The problem is that I've decided who I want to be, but I am of mixed minds about that because I want to be different people in different circumstances. And so at fifth order, I begin to discover that I am, in fact, made up of many different subsystems, even in terms of my consciousness. A part of me wants this and a part of me wants that. And so I am in conflict even with myself. So I have to develop a way of understanding, a self-consciousness that is big enough that it supports all of these different aspects of me, which moves me up to sixth order. Now I have the capacity to have a consciousness of myself and thus of others that contains all of these previous stages. Each stage transcends but includes all the earlier stages. So at sixth order, now I have this capacity to see myself within a kind of broader perspective and in relationships with others. And as I move into seventh order, I discover that who I am, the I that I think I am, is simply an artifact of certain accidental experiences that have happened, who my parents were, what race I am, what capacities I have. And these are not things I created. They are things that were bequeathed to me by my life experience. And so there's no sense in which I am better than or even other than other people who are just themselves specific examples of creation, because we are all part of the same pool of humanity, of matter, of energy, of the created order. And so at eighth order, we discover that we are all a part of everything. All right? So this is a very quick walk through the 8 orders of self, the 8 orders of being, but my self-consciousness as an example of that sequence. And there's lots of implications for this. So for this week, I want to be sure that we really are clear about and we understand the map. And next week, we're going to talk much more about the implications of this map. All right, so I'll see you Thursday evening.